going to do an update on our chili plants today, and we're also going to quickly talk about what we need to do if we want to save some seeds from these plants as well. Hopefully by now your plants are starting to actually produce some fruit and have plenty of flowers on. This is actually one in one of the smaller pots. It's one that hasn't been potted up yet. We're going to have a look at the ones that we potted up together in a moment. You may find that you also start getting some holes being eaten into the chilies. If it's the very bottom of the chilies, then you might find that that's something like mice and you need to set some traps. But if it's just within the wall of the chili itself, then it may be something like slugs. So one of the things that we can do in order to prevent this happening is using an organzo bag, and this is also what we're going to use for the seed saving. It's something that I usually find happens more on the peppers rather than the chilies. I think they don't like the spice quite so much, but hopefully you won't have too many issues with it. It really depends on where you have them growing and whether or not there are places for the slugs to hide as well. Often slugs are the culprit, but we think maybe that there's other things that are the culprit, like earwigs and pill bugs, that will be there afterwards and just cleaning up the area where the slugs have actually put a hole into it. So this is what my plants are looking like at the moment. I've got one that is doing extremely well. This is the one in the Incredibloom, and then the other one, so of the two of the varieties that we've been growing together, the Palavec, you can see is a much weaker plant out of the two, and I'm pretty certain it's to do with the compost actually. So this was the Durston's peat-free compost, but it is a different type of compost that usually comes in their bag. So I do think that we've had some that they've had while they've been struggling to get stock rather than it's their usual one. So it's not really a fair representation of how their compost normally does. However, you can really see that on this one in the Incredibloom, which has the extra feed, the leaves are a very dark green, and there is an awful lot of flowers, an awful lot of leaves on this compared to this one. So the difference is absolutely huge. Hopefully yours are looking more like this, but it may depend on what compost you are using. So now they are established, one of the things that I am going to be doing is actually removing some of these leaves from the bottom part of the stem. This is usually done up to either where the first flower has started producing or up to where the plant splits into 2 or 3 stems. I'm going to be taking it up to the first of where the stems have now gradually started splitting a little bit further down and they are more established. So to do this, I'm literally just going to gently snap those leaves off. This should encourage less leafy growth and more fruit to produce. This will of course also help with some airflow for the plants as well. So that's what I've removed on this one. So this is the bottom stem that has got a side shoot and where I'm leaving it from, and then all the leaves have just been removed below. This does look extremely dry, but we are keeping an eye on the weight of the pot rather than how it looks. I've also added a bit of a frame to this one and a bit of support because the wind that we've been having through the polytunnel has just been waving it about a little bit too much, but the others have been okay so far with that. And then this one down here, I'm going to do exactly the same, where I'm just removing those lower leaves. This is entirely optional. If you don't want to do it, if it seems counterintuitive to you, then just leave them on. So one thing that I am also doing with this one in the Durston's compost is I am continuing to feed this one with the chili and pepper focus, whereas this one hasn't needed any additional feed because it has the slow release feed in it. And then interestingly, this is one of the seedlings I showed you a moment ago, and this one is looking much better, much more lush and green, and this is in the usual Durston's mix. So I will be finding another pot out and just potting these on. I've also got some that are just in some compost bags that are cut in half outside that I use for any plants that are left over to give away to people locally. Give away the fruits, that is, not the plant, and they are looking a lot better as well than these ones. So it does seem to be a bit of an odd batch of the compost. You may notice as well that the leaves look like they're wilting quite a bit, particularly on this one, which is doing better. And that is just because of the heat at the moment. It recovers once it's covered up and once the evening draws in and it gets a bit cooler. So don't be tempted to overwater them just because the leaves are looking like they're wilting. Keep an eye on the weight of the pot still rather than just water just in case. You can also find that chilies and peppers will get a little bit sun scorched if they are exposed for too long. So we've taken the cover off at the moment, but what I have normally got is a cover on the end of the polytunnel just to keep these in a bit more shade. They absolutely love the heat, but they're not as keen on the sun beating down on them constantly. So that is something to consider, particularly if yours are struggling. This is actually a different variety, but hopefully you can see the little flower here. As with our tomatoes, our chilies and our peppers have both the female and the male part within the flower. So rather than needing to have any animals or anything pollinate it, we can literally just give it a bit of a tap to encourage the pollen to move from one area of the flower to the other, and that should hopefully do the job for us. Once they have pollinated, we should start seeing what we have here on this flower, where you'll have the flower starting to dry, and then underneath that we'll find the pepper starting to produce. If they don't pollinate, then the stem just falls off. So other than tapping it, other things that we could do if you're having this with lots of them is actually just to give it a little bit of a light spray with some water, and that might help with the moisture levels. And then you can, once they are dry enough, gently pull off the flower. Although I'd be careful when you do this because you don't want to encourage it to pull off the stem. And then below that, you should be able to see where the pepper is starting to produce underneath. So if we want to actually save seeds from these chilies, then one thing that we want to do is isolate either the plant or the individual flower to be able to make sure that those seeds are pure and they haven't cross-pollinated. They actually cross-pollinate reasonably easily. The other way in which you won't need to worry is if you are only growing one variety and you don't have lots of other plots with them growing around you. The general suggestion is between 20 and 300 meters that you'd want them to be isolated. So if you have got other gardens beside you that are growing them, you may still need to do this. If you're isolating the entire plant, then you would just need to grab yourself some sort of bag that's breathable, like an organzo material, and place it over the whole plant, and then continue just to sort of shake the whole stem to encourage that pollen to move in order for them to continue pollinating. Otherwise, you want to grab yourself an individual flower or an individual area where they haven't yet been pollinated and pop a little bag over that area. If you have any in there that have already pollinated and you can't isolate them at this point, then you can also pop a little string around the ones that have already been pollinated, and then you know which ones not to save the seeds from, or you can do that the other way around and only pop a little string around the ones that you do want to save. Once the chilies have grown to their full size and they are fully ripe, we will look again at what you need to do in order to remove the seeds and set them up ready for next year. When we're selecting the plants that we want to save the seeds from, make sure that there is nothing that is shouting out that is a problem. So there's no leaves that are a funny shape, that the plant is really doing very well, and that the fruits are a normal shape and they're doing absolutely fine. If you've got any weaker, so like the ones I've got in the other compost, then it's not worth saving the seeds from them because we don't want to save those characteristics. You can start harvesting your chilies when they're green as well, and that will encourage more to produce. And then if you want to leave them to go red, then they will also turn black before they go red, and that can be a little bit alarming. And they'll be all different colours depending on the variety. So I have some that start as a pale green or yellow, and then they actually go to a purple. So that can actually take a long time. So have a little bit of patience and don't worry if it is taking a very long time. They will come about, and then we'll have a look at how to preserve them and dry them at that point as well.